Hey, welcome to Clarksville Vibe the show where we tell the stories of people in Clarksville who make this place the greatest place to live in America. I'm your host, Kevin Kennedy Jr., local pediatric dentist, a lifelong Clarksville native. Just happy to share the positive and encouraging stories from all around our community of people who are making an impact in different ways and bring you their stories so that we can share what it is about the people who make up this community that makes this the greatest place to live in America. Hey, once again, thank you so much for the momentum that we're gaining on this show. I can feel it. This season 2 that we have been releasing episode by episode, I've had more people come up to me in restaurants and, out on the street, out on the town, and just tell me how much value they're finding in that. Just want to say thank you tremendously for listening to each episode. Make sure you go ahead and share some as you're tracking back through the episodes. If you hear somebody's name mentioned, share it with them or reach out to them. What I know is that people want to hear a positive message about Clarksville. They want to hear about the great people who make up this community, the leaders who are creating change and creating new ideas and new positive impact all across our community. And I'm happy to be able to share some of that. Today's guest is no different. He is someone who is leading an organization here that is near and dear to me and my family, and it has continued to grow in this community for a number of years. I am officially old enough to have never really fully participated in it while a high school student, but now I know that our high school students all across the community are benefiting from YoungLife. Our guest is David Kissell. He's with us today. He is the executive director, and he has taken over and just leading YoungLife in a new way all across the community in lots of different high schools, on campus, dealing with our teenagers all across the community and helping give them hope and give them things that they can believe in so that they can have real change in their life in a positive way. David, thanks so much for jumping on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here and talk about YoungLife.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I did date myself a little bit. YoungLife started in Clarksville. We were just recently at the banquet, and I think I heard the year was 2006 or so. And so I graduated high school 2003. It just barely missed it. I left Austin P at 2006. So right as things were getting up, I was kind of down in the dental school. But we recently celebrated the banquet. The YoungLife banquet is a fun celebration every year to not only celebrate what has happened in YoungLife over the last year, but also get to hear about new things that are coming up along the way. So right off the top, tell us a little bit about what is YoungLife and what's your role for it, and tell us kind of how that banquet went.
Yeah, I'd love to share about that. So YoungLife is a ministry directly to teenagers, and we go to the schools, to the campuses, with the purpose of introducing them to Jesus Christ and helping them grow in their faith. And it looks a lot like volunteer leaders stepping up and saying, I'm willing to go stand in the student section, go to a practice, be the only non-parent at a JV football game.
Yeah, that's right.
It's great. And that's where YoungLife leaders go, and that's
or the most intimidating place in a high school, which is the cafeteria.
The cafeteria is a unique place. You don't think you would be intimidated by a table of 15-year-old boys, but it can be difficult.
Yeah.
But that's how YoungLife was built. It is really it's not a competition to the church. We're a mission arm of the church that says our mission field is a high school. And so we're going to go to where teenagers are, and they have no clue who we are, and they don't know anything about Jesus, but we're going to show up in their lives and care about them, listen to them, and love them regardless of their response to Jesus or to us.
Sure.
Yeah. And so we had our banquet recently. It was a wonderful night. Clarksville is such a unique YoungLife area. There's a YoungLife in over 100 countries. It's all across the U.S. Tennessee has one of the largest YoungLife communities in all of the mission. And Clarksville is just so unique because it is built on a lot of individuals who give. We don't have one massive giver, so we're a nonprofit completely funded by people in the community. And we have a large giving base of not givers over $50,000 or $40,000, and it's wonderful to see how There's so many people in our community who care about this mission and keep us thriving. And that just continued at the banquet, and we're thankful for where the Lord has us and trusting in Him.
The banquets are always fun. I go to a lot of banquets throughout the year of different nonprofits, different organizations, go to some Austin P banquets. The Young Life one is one that you kind of mark on your calendar and you'll plan around a little bit because it's pretty fun. It's always extremely well planned. So you never have this, for people who go to a lot of banquets, there's like a lag in banquets. Sometimes you're like, what are we doing right now? The Young Life banquet is always just right on target and it's just moving through. And it's really fun to be around. And I'm sure that type of culture is really just reflective of what you're doing when you're around the students as well.
It's something that we care so much about. It's excellence in everything that we do. We want to be very detailed. The banquet looks a little different. It's the only time in the year that I wear a suit. But other than that, the principles are the same about throwing a great party.
Sure.
And everybody wants to go to a great party. And so we do that at our banquet. We do that at our weekly Young Life gatherings. We incorporate laughter. We believe that laughter tears down walls, and it takes a kid from sitting with their arms crossed to leaning forward and laughing with their friends. And we don't take ourselves too serious as well.
Yeah.
So excited about that.
That's a great strategy because, we're both in our mid-30s. I'll say you're in your mid-30s. I'm in my late 30s. But there is a widening gap with every day that goes by of us being able to connect to high school students. But what is a universal connector of people is laughter, right? And it changes in terms of how you approach it, or maybe what is funny now, but you've got to constantly adapt. You got to constantly meet people where they are. And that's what I've loved about the Young Life strategy since I've kind of become familiar with it. My wife was involved in Knoxville. They've got a long, rich history in Knoxville in terms of Young Life. When she came to Austin P, we didn't necessarily have that yet. But when we moved back to Clarksville after dental school and residency, she was telling me about her friend who had just started Young Life, and I had never really heard of it other than we had some friends in Memphis that were involved in Young Life there while I was in dental school and residency. But what I noticed about it from the very beginning is, here we are. This seems different. This seems very intentional. You're training people up and you're going to meet students where they are with a strategy and with a idea of connecting with them where and how they would most feel connected.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the changing world of students and how that is so difficult to connect to them. A new generation that is, has so much technology, but has never been more disconnected. And so while we see the changes happening and the things that they find funny, I don't find funny at all. And the videos they have doesn't make sense to me. But the one thing that hasn't changed is the fact that people in high school and before that and after that, they want someone to listen to them. They want someone to show up in their lives. They want someone that says, I'll be here no matter what. And that's what we do within Young Life.
That's really cool.
One of my favorite Young Life guys spoke at the banquet, Blake Butcher, plays baseball at Clarksville High School, and he was sharing how Young Life is this judgment-free zone. And it kind of made me step back for a second. I was like, oh, I hope he understands the consequences of sin, and I hope he understands the weight of the gospel. But also, over and over in Scripture, I just see this outpouring of grace and this outpouring of Jesus being in places that others were judging. And Young Life leaders a lot of times feel like we're sitting at the table of tax collectors and sinners, and it looks messy, but we keep showing up there.
Yeah.
And it's a great place to get to be.
That's fun. You brought it up a little bit, and I did want to talk about it because our audience is probably mostly 25 and above. And some of us are not connected to high schoolers unless we have high schoolers or unless, nieces or nephews or something like that. But the challenges of high school are different than it was in the early 2000s. And the challenge in the early 2000s was different than it was in the 90s or the 80s or any other decade. Things just change. So tell us a little bit about what are some of the challenges that you're seeing high school students really carry very heavy right now, and where are you able to be that ear that listens and provide the judgment-free zone where you can just say, what's going on? How are you feeling about this? How is this affecting you? Maybe things that are always constant. I'm sure there's family issues that are always constant, but then there's new issues that maybe we didn't have to deal with.
I think the biggest increase that I've seen is in mental health and anxiety. I remember going to things when I was in high school and always wanting to be in the game, always wanting to go and, I'm glad to be up front, glad to be involved, wanting to do those things. And just a number of high schoolers who will say, hey, I'm scared to be involved in this because there's so many people around. And there's just this, COVID really ravaged that just fear of being around people and what large groups look like for people, how they're perceived. You can get up on stage or do something goofy, and that doesn't bother me because, like you said, I'm in my mid-30s. I don't care what a high schooler puts on their social media. But a high school student worrying about what other people may capture and say about them, and it breaks our hearts to do that. And so it looks different. I've been involved with Young Life going on 6 years now, and the amount of guys that I need to meet with individually, meet one-on-one to just talk about their mental health and where Jesus intersects with that, to understand the medical side of those things and to be able to pass them off to people, to make great connections with local counselors and people who are going to care for them and love them in a way that I can't is so important to us. And so it's a big deal for us to get connected in the community to professionals in other areas.
Yeah. One thing I've heard mentioned before, and it makes sense to me, and you don't think about it unless you really understand the dynamics of the internet age, is that when we did something that was embarrassing to ourselves, it required word of mouth spread, right? It's very, very, very rare that would have been captured on any kind of video. And then for that experience to be shared, it necessitated that someone would tell someone and someone would tell someone. But by nature of it, you're constantly maybe a little bit more separated from that chain of communication. Whereas now, when all the chain of communication is on one place, the weight of feeling this embarrassment is so heavy, right? And it's just different. And I don't think that our generation of adults can quite comprehend it unless maybe you've been in the online sphere, having some type of, either negative press or negative interaction that you was hoping would go away, but then you're realizing how quickly this could come out of place. And so when you say your teenagers are dealing with this anxiety, I'm hoping that what our generation of adults who can care for these teenagers is hearing is things are different. It is not just labeling the same feelings that we had of anxiety and depression. Some of that is actually labeling it and giving it a name, and it should be, but it is also a different weight in many areas, and the pressure is so much higher and the stakes are so much higher because online reputations are built in an instant. You can become the most popular person in high school and you can become the opposite of that just within a few clicks. And I would find that to be a lot of pressure, knowing myself, knowing how I experienced and navigated high school relationships, especially as you're trying to figure out who you are as a person. So having Young Life, someone who is a coach or a leader who is trained and acknowledging that, knowing when they would need to pass something on, knowing when they could help leverage the relationship of another person, knowing when they can use their skills and their talents to speak into something, I think is just an incredible opportunity for our high schoolers to have those relationships in place. As of right now, YoungLife is not in all of the high schools, but has a good solid presence in most of them. Which schools do you feel like YoungLife has the longest history in? Like where did that first start? And then what schools do you as a leader kind of have on your brain of, I'm really looking for some opportunities to provide the students inside this school a solid presence of leadership, of someone that they can look to?
Yeah. So we started at Clarksville High School.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was, like you said, 17 years ago, and have expanded to Rossview. And then from there, it was Northeast High School, Clarksville Academy, and then most recently Montgomery Central. Okay. And so those are the 5 high schools we're currently in. And we would love to be in every single high school in our community, which I feel like we keep adding them year after year.
Yeah, you're always in the deficit.
Yeah, we're always playing catch up. And the reason that we're not in all of the high schools is simply a numbers game. Mm. We want quality, trained leaders in our schools who are willing to step up and go the extra mile to be in the lives of high schoolers. Kind of to go back to the difficulties of high schoolers, I don't want anybody listening to fear connecting with high school students, thinking, oh, I need to be a college student. That's a great young life leader is a college student. That's not true. A great young life leader is someone who loves Jesus and is willing to step into the world of high schoolers. I had 2 young life leaders when I was in Texas serving there who were both in their 60s, and they were loved by high school students. The founder of Young Life, Jim Rayburn, once said, teenagers will gravitate to the oldest person in the room who cares about them. Mm. And my challenge to anybody listening is to say, not that I can't do this, but I can step into the lives of high school students. I can go after them. And we have some schools that are in deep need. I was speaking recently with a juvenile court judge who was saying, I don't want to call out the high school, but just fights and lots of disciplinary actions and a great need for Young Life to step in. And we want to be in all of those schools. Yeah. We want to chase after high school students and let them know that there's a God who deeply loves them and cares about them. And so we're doing the work to get more leaders. We're actually interviewing Young Life leaders right now, and we're constantly chasing after them. While also at the same time setting the bar really high. I would much rather be in a leader deficit than dealing with leaders who aren't willing to do the difficult work. Mm-hmm. So we have the best volunteer leaders.
That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned it. Well, I think one of the challenges of leading something like this, where you're trying to interact with all these high schools in Clarksville, is that because we're growing so constantly, you mentioned it, we're constantly adding schools. It's like what started in 2006 was some of the schools that were there, and then we've just added new schools since then, and it's hard to kind of keep up with that. What are some other challenges that you feel like the Clarksville community has as a whole that Young Life could really benefit from if the community understood more of what you did?
Yeah, we looked at recently our local committee, which is a group of adults who kind of help shepherd and guide some decisions that we make locally. They're a mouthpiece for Young Life in the community. They advocate for things that we do. And most of those people were kind of localized around the Madison Street, Sango area. They all go to almost the same church, and their kids were involved in either Clarksville High School, Rossview, or Clarksville Academy. And so one of the things that and it's on us, but also inviting the community in and saying, we need your help.
Yeah.
We want to expand to all parts of Clarksville. We want to look more diverse. If you came to the banquet, one of the things that you would have noticed is it looked pretty white in there. And that's a flaw. That's something that we're not running from. We're not hiding. We're saying we want to look more like this city. It's a very diverse community. And we need to change that in terms of, we have a very diverse group of kids who are involved, but we want to be more diverse in our leaders, in our committee, and people who are advocates for what we do.
Yeah.
And so we want to change those things, and we want to reach out to those who can help us learn and can learn more about what we are pursuing in Clarksville.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And it kind of leads to a strength of Clarksville that people often bring up is the diversity, that we happen to be a geographical spot where lots of people from around the country and the world stop here for a short period, and either they return or they decide to stay here or whatever it is. But our small community of 200,000-ish people is pretty naturally diverse with lots of different types of people. And so I think that's an advantage. Are there other advantages when you're talking to your Young Life colleagues, let's say around the state, around the Southeast, where you're like, man, we've got this opportunity in Clarksville that doesn't really exist to the same level in other markets or other cities around the state or the region?
One of the special things about Clarksville happens with Austin P.
Okay.
The percentage of students that go to Austin P, I think it's around 50% are from Montgomery County or surrounding counties. And so the benefit is the best Young Life that we do for our high school students allows kids to go to Austin P and become leaders and serve in the community. So it's a unique thing that kids who are involved can stay. We have a Young Life house, which is, that's a lot to get into, but just kind of a short story about that. It's not really a house. It's 2-level building with apartments upstairs that Young Life leaders can live in, college students can live in, right across the street from Austin P, and then downstairs space for high schoolers and college students to hang out.
Cool.
And it was the vision of previous area director Clifford Shirley, and then Todd Halliday and Mark Holloman had this vision, and so many men and women in this community stepped up. Businesses like Mac Plumbing, who donated time and labor, and so many others. I'd leave out a million people if I started naming them. But they created a place that is one of the best places in all of Young Life for college students and high school students to take advantage of. And so we are just looking and saying, hey, our strength is the better Young Life we do here, the more students will want to stay, be involved in a great university, and serve and give back where they grew up.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I've heard great things about the house, and I love that you mentioned how the community created this idea, and then you relied on people both in their, vision and gifting from their profession, people like Mark Holloman, and then also in-kind gifts from people like Mac Plumbing. That family is a great family. When Young Life gets started in a community, let's maybe travel back to 2005 or 6. And I know you weren't here at that time, and I wasn't involved at that time, but how does that start look organizationally from, let's say, Young Life larger as an organization to selecting Clarksville? And then are there still some people who are around let's say the round table in the room where it happens, in the Hamilton reference, of those first couple meetings about Young Life Clarksville that are still involved today?
Yeah, that is so amazing how Young Life got started here. There were just some key families. Todd Halliday was a part of that. Ted and Missy Reese, Casey Jenkins involved in that. The McGinnises. I'm definitely
right.
leaving some people out. Somebody's sending me a text message later on.
Here's the disclaimer. Yeah. This is shot live. This is unprepared, so if he leaves your name out, you come talk to me about it. It's my fault. Don't come at you on it, right?
Yeah, please continue to support Young Life in the community in spite of my short memory.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got together with Josh Loy was his name, and first area director that served here, and they just had a vision for what Young Life could be in this community. And it's really helping a lot of the local churches to understand that we are not in competition with them. Young Life loves the church, and our goal is to see high school students introduced to Jesus, and for us to say, hey, we want to connect you with a church.
Absolutely.
And the reason that Young Life was started was because some kids are going to say no to the church no matter what, because of their own perceptions of their parents. And we look at that and say, that's fine. That doesn't stop you from being introduced to Jesus.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to where you are. You don't have to come to us. You don't have to come to a building. We're going to go to where you are, and then we want to point you to Jesus and connect you to the church. And First Baptist Church, back in 2006, I believe most of the original committee, they were members there, and they really stepped up and said, okay, we believe in this, and we're behind this.
Wow. Yeah, what a great story. So when did you kind of see this as an opportunity for your family to move here and be part of Young Life Clarksville? And who were some of the first people that you met that kind of sold you on, okay, I could see my family living here? Because you're from Tennessee, but you're not from an immediately surrounding area. So I'm sure you had to learn a lot about Clarksville in order to kind of pitch it to your wife and, convince yourself that your kids are going to have a great life here and things like that.
Yeah, we were living in Texas, serving with Young Life there, and the position became open here. It was actually in February of 2020, right before COVID.
Wow.
So I accepted the job.
Yeah.
And then I moved here in May of 2020, which was really unique and a lot of things there. But
the year of no high school graduations.
Yes, no high school graduation. Spent my first year not even getting to step foot in the school because nobody could go in.
Yeah.
And there was a partnership with FCA that year where they had an opening to be a character coach at Clarksville High School baseball. And so I partnered with Gary Raincorn. I said, I'll be FCA. I can be whatever
Labels
ministry you need me to be. I'm just going to show up to where high school students are. But yeah, back to moving here, my wife and I just praying about the opportunity to be around high school students, opportunity to be closer to family. Bradley and Ashley Jackson were on that original committee, and they were great friends and just shared a lot about this community, the school system. My son is at Barksdale Elementary. We live in the neighborhood backed up to that. My daughter will go there and get to be involved in the Spanish immersion program,
that's cool.
Which you should do a podcast on.
I really should. That's
Plugging
a great
Barksdale
idea.
Spanish
That's right.
immersion program. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Although I don't know what my son is saying every now and then, so that's
neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But it sounds really amazing.
Yes, and just so it's a great school system.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we were just thrilled to be a part of that. And so it didn't take long to be sold on Clarksville. It's taken some getting used to, but I think a lot of that was moving during a pandemic. And the first time I went to a church was in September or October of being somewhere. And that wasn't because I didn't want to be involved in a church. It was because no church was actually open for me to attend.
Everything was online.
Yes. So it made the transition a little odd, but it's been great. And we've loved to be here and to see the growth. And I think what we saw too was faithfulness of young adults. I can't remember what generation they're called, but the 20-somethings who lead with us kind of get a bad rap a lot of times.
Yeah.
And what we saw were a group of college students who continued to be faithful in the midst of just very unique times. One of our leaders, Sydney, she just started writing letters to her high school girls and dropping them off in their mailboxes because they couldn't gather face to face. And they stepped up big.
Yeah. What was it like to enter the high school for the first time? Because you're coming here, it's like, this is what you moved here for. You couldn't do it for 6-8 months. Were you able to go in that next school year, or was it a whole nother school year, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it was touch and go
Okay.
for a little while. We have wonderful administrators in the school system here who have allowed Young Life to have access to the schools. And so Clarksville High School was just so welcoming.
Yeah.
But also following the guidelines there.
Yeah, nobody knew what to do, right? But we also knew that our students needed help, right? And they needed more help than our faculty and staff could offer them. And so I'm sure as an administrator of a school, you're dealing with this challenge of, we know students are struggling with unique challenges that no one alive today has ever faced. And we're trying to figure all of this out, both the academic side, but also the whole well-being of the student side. And we need to leverage some help, but yet also we've got to be very careful about who we're letting in the building, what are the protocols, because just nobody really knew what to do for a long time.
Yeah, it made it difficult there. But one of the things that we always say to any administrator is, we will never get in the way of what you're doing at the school. We are there to serve you. It's their territory.
Sure.
It's their place that they are running and educating and caring for students. And we want to be a group that says we are here to care for students. And we're not going to, force kids to read a Bible. And we're not going to only care for a select group of students. We're going to show up and say, hey, we'll care for anybody that we get the opportunity to cross paths with. Yeah. And my experience has been principals and teachers and coaches learn to trust us because we don't want to be takers. We want to be givers, and we seek to give back. And the school system is always looking for people to give back and volunteer.
Sure. Yeah. So tell me, what's new in Young Life? What are some things that you're creating now that you have an opportunity to maybe have more of a consistent presence, and where is your leadership vision growing, where you have some opportunity to establish something new that wasn't always here?
Yeah, one of the things we launched just this past year is a ministry called Young Lives. It's a ministry directly to teenage moms and their babies. In Montgomery County alone, we have 190 new teenage moms each year. And so with that, it creates challenges. And so the ministry of Young Lives is a one-to-one ministry where our traditional high school Young Life leaders are chasing after several grades of people. Young Lives is connecting a female mentor to one teenage mom and walking alongside them, helping them to grow as a mom and to know who Jesus is, to be in a community with other girls who understand what it's like to be a teenage mom. And so that's something that we just launched. So excited about where we are with that and where we're going with that in the days ahead. And then there are multiple ministries within Young Life that we want to see started. We have a middle school ministry that I think would only add to the fact of helping us to see more leaders. And the middle school ministry is run primarily by a lot of high school students who step up and say they want to invest in the lives of middle schoolers, and then also some adults in the community to really lead that and provide guidance there. And so that's something we want to see happen in the near future. And I think that just will challenge more high school students to give their lives away at a younger age to step up and serve. Because we can look and we can complain about this younger generation, or we can give them something to grow into. And we're a ministry that says kids can grow into great leaders. They can grow into the next pastors, the next... and it doesn't even have to be a pastor, just businessmen and women who are in their fields, loving Jesus and loving others. And so that's what we want to see. And then another ministry that I'm passionate about within Young Life, and have talked to Courtney McGinnis, I'm putting her on the spot to help me get this started. But there's a ministry called Capernaum, which is Young Life to teenagers with special needs. And it's a unique ministry that cares for them. It helps partner high school and college students as their buddies.
Yeah.
And that's a great partnership with schools as well, because we want to see inclusion happen with Young Life. We want everyone to have a seat at the table.
Sure.
And so, I'm not putting a timetable on that, because I'd get in trouble with my committee, because I always get ahead of myself.
The great leaders do. Your vision always outpaces, the budget and the organizational structure and all of that. So don't shut down the vision. Yeah.
I'm not shutting it down, but
outpace the people. Let the committee reel you back in.
Yeah, I would say hey, we'll get it going in 2 weeks and we're ready to go. But no, just praying about those things and looking and saying, Lord, where will you have us next? Because it may not be, the middle school ministry just yet. It may be one of our other high schools.
Sure.
And so just seeing what that is.
I mean, I would personally love to see every high school represented, just because I'm a Clarksville native. My mom graduated from Northwest High School. My dad was Clarksville High graduate. I graduated from Rossview. I spent some time at Northeast, but have great friends who are teachers and administrators at Kenwood, at West Creek. Now we've got Kirkwood that's opening up. We got to have plans there. And it's each of these schools are such dynamic and powerful additions to our community, and they all shine a bright light in maybe some unique ways that are different between some schools, but still, they're still our high schools. And, to see the value in the kids who attend these high schools to the same level and have a community that raises up leaders who are willing to kind of go in and do the hard work that you mentioned in terms of being present for these high school students, I think it's on us as a community to do that. And I'm very thankful that Young Life has the structure and the support in order to welcome the leaders, train them, and then give them the opportunity to go with a great brand that when they enter onto a campus, it's a recognized name. You're not doing this as someone who's just totally on your own with no real purpose. No, we're a part of this organization who's been in this community now for 17 years, and we're continuing to build and grow and help students where they are. So thank you for your leadership in that area. I think that's just fantastic. And it's been really, really fun on this episode to hear the mission of Young Life, hear who's been involved in our community, what Clarksville offers to it, what are some challenges and some opportunities that Clarksville has. And I think our listeners continue to give me great feedback when we get to share the stories of organizations like Young Life. So thanks for the time doing this today. I am going to jump to the lightning round, which I didn't prepare you for. So these are just fun questions at the end.
Let's do it.
Do you have a favorite Young Life skit?
Ooh, I had one, Coach Petey and Coach Packer, that, one of my best friends in Texas, we would do. And basically it's your typical jock coach, and then everybody should get a trophy coach.
Oh, okay. And it's just going back and forth.
Yeah, they kind of go back and forth with each other. So
is there a catalog of Young Life skits that you can watch, or are they written form, or how do these get passed along?
It's an underground society. Some Young Life staff, they hold on to them and they won't tell you the skits that they have. And I'm learning that more and more.
Have you ever written one?
Yeah, probably a bad one. It wasn't as funny as somebody else's. The best skits out there are borrowed from some legends on Young Life staff.
That's awesome. I've always kind of wondered about that. Do you have a favorite local high school event that you've been a part of as a Young Life leader? You're like, oh, I always want to go to that when it pops up.
This doesn't directly answer your question, but I've never been to a wrestling match before moving to Clarksville.
Wow.
It wasn't a sport in my high school, and didn't have it at the schools I led in Texas. And I remember taking my son to a wrestling match. I was expecting ropes and someone,
yes, right.
Yeah. Some
cage match.
Yeah. Outfits there, but that wasn't the case. And Clarksville has a rich history in wrestling, and just getting to be around that That's amazing. Those guys are some real athletes.
And females. I mean, we had some, I think Rossview's high school female wrestling team either won a state championship or had some individual state champions this year.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
So I've enjoyed getting to go to that.
That's cool. That's a great answer. So every time I see you, you're wearing some type of orange, obviously a big Tennessee fan. Do you have a favorite Tennessee volunteer athlete on campus right now?
Ooh, Christian Scott.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, from Rossview.
Nice.
Actually got to take my son to a baseball game this past weekend, and Christian Scott, met him, was just so kind to my son. He was actually involved in some Young Life when he was here. So he's got to be my favorite right now. Then, I mean, Jalen Hyatt was awesome for football season. Yeah, I'm constantly wearing Tennessee stuff, Volunteer Traditions, which the owner of Volunteer Traditions, you should check him out. He's a big Young Life supporter.
Really?
Has some of the best clothes for a Tennessee fan.
Yeah, awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for joining on the show, but thank you even more for just your leadership and your vision that you're giving to Young Life here in our community. As a hometown boy, Clarksville native, 5 generations deep, as the years go by, I am just more excited about organizations that come alongside the church and help identify needs of where people can meet Jesus and provide the structure and the strategy and the support in order to do that. And it takes great people like you who are really passionate about it, who can motivate people and encourage people, who can leverage the resources in our community of the names like you've said, like the Reese family, like the Jenkins family, like, Bradley and Ashley Jackson, these people who are operating businesses and yet still want to see our community grow and still see for what Young Life is, high school students have a very real, meaningful life change where their struggles, their challenges, their joys, everything that encompasses the high school experience can be filtered through people who care about them and who are consistently show up for them. And Young Life has done that for so many years. And I know that you've been here a few years now since COVID, but I'm really excited about your tenure and your leadership that you have here, and wish you and Young Life nothing but the best.
Thanks so much for having me and allowing me to share about Young Life. I think with Clarksville, why not us? Why can't we have the best?
Yeah.
And we can.
And I'm going to say it. We need every high school represented. So if you've got a connection to a high school that wasn't mentioned before, let's do it.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
I'll put my number in the comment section. Reach out. I'd love to see more leaders.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, hey, thanks for making it to the end of this episode. I know you've enjoyed hearing some great stories about Young Life, something that is honestly relatively new, but yet has sustained almost an entire generation of high school students, engaging them where they are. Young Life is just continuing to move the ball forward, as we say in this podcast, of making great positive change all across our community. We're thankful for the impact that they have. You can find ways to get involved with them. We would really love to see that one touch point in every one of our local high schools, even as we add one with Kirkwood coming up this year. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Hey, go ahead and share it to somebody. If you know somebody at one of those high schools, share it to them right now and tell them it's on them. But thanks for making it to the end of this. We'll catch you on the next one.